Having the right attorney is a key component when buying or selling a business. I have seen firsthand the value that a seasoned mergers and acquisitions attorney can add for their clients. Let me tell you about a law firm that I have worked with and would highly recommend for anyone thinking about buying or selling a business. Benjamin Gussin and Associates. They are a law firm that has been representing buyers and sellers of businesses for more than 30 years. Believe me, they are experts. Not just experts in business transactions, but also real estate and tax guidance, which are both often required when buying or selling a business. From the initial steps of reviewing a letter of intent, right through to closing, the attorneys at Benjamin Gussin provide the personalized service and experience needed for putting the pieces together for a successful and flawless transaction. I've known the lead M&A partner, Lee Gussin, for many years, and I have never hesitated referring a client to him. So if you're looking to buy or sell a business, feel free to reach out to Lee at 847-861-6220. That's 847-861-6220. I thank them for sponsoring today's episode and hope you enjoy it.
Looking to buy, sell, or grow your business to position it for a sale? As the owner and managing partner of Sun Acquisitions, Domenic Rinaldi has personally been involved in over 300 M&A transactions. He has seen and done it all, consulting with large and small businesses across a broad range of industries. On M&A Unplugged, he'll interview buyers, sellers, and their advisors about their experiences scaling, selling, and acquiring businesses. On every episode, you will get key learnings, but most importantly, you will be better prepared for your own acquisition or sale. This is M&A Unplugged with your host, Domenic Rinaldi.
My guest today, Steve Kennett, was looking to own a small business, a boring or unexpected business. These are in his own words, that had steady revenue and that would be scalable. Steve found that diamond in the rough and acquired Phoenix Industrial Cleaning. Phoenix is a 30-year-old business that provides large-scale industrial cleaning and interior protection, largely to the packaging and food manufacturing sectors. I've known Steve for many years and happen to know that he took his time to find the right business to acquire. He looked at a lot of businesses and kicked around a lot of ideas before finding and settling on Phoenix. Given Steve's extensive sales and marketing experience, he was confident that once he found the right opportunity, he could leverage those skills to scale a business. And sure enough, that's exactly what Steve has done, growing Phoenix by over 60% since taking over. Steve, congrats on all the success. And I understand you've kind of become a yardstick for your buddies looking to take the plunge maybe into business ownership themselves.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, I think a lot of folks that are in, I wouldn't say the late stages of their career, but maybe reflecting on kind of where they are in their career and what they want to do and time it takes to do things, have reached out to me and talked to me about the process and doing their own kind of analysis of whether this is the right thing for them, for sure.
Little rock star status there. I really want to hear what's happened with Phoenix because, I mean, you've had such really tremendous success since taking over, and I'm not surprised at all. I, too, think that was a diamond in the rough opportunity. But take me back to the beginning. When did you first think about acquiring a business, and did you come from a family of business owners?
First of all, my dad was an optometrist, so I guess that's somewhat of an entrepreneur. But I think after I left college, I ran into some of my friends' fathers that had gone through this process. And over a few years, I started kind of seeing myself in that role as opposed to maybe moving through a corporate ranks or, uprooting my family and moving around the country for my career. I saw one executive from Quaker Oats that left there and bought a small roofing coatings business. That interested me. And why would someone like that move that direction? Another friend of mine's father owned a small electrical components company that built electronics for electric blankets and speakers, stereo equipment. So I saw these guys, the lifestyle they were living, the gratification that they were receiving and managing and running their own business, somewhat of a family business. And I started seeing myself at some point in my future that that's probably a good fit for me in the long term. I didn't necessarily know it was going to be this under the radar thing, but I knew that that's somewhere that's probably a good place for me.
So this was early in your career, and then you went off to have, a long career in the software industry, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, and I think like many folks, getting out of college, there's a lot of technology industry businesses out there, and companies are looking for young folks to go out there and market and sell and develop products in that area. Back when I was just getting out of college, that was really at its infancy. And so it was really interesting back in the, I hate to say the late 80s, where you were starting to see these careers pop up and finding roles for people like me in there to sell and market. And it was a very rewarding career in sales. You're working with a lot of executives, you're making decisions that impact large companies, providing great value. And so there was a lot of satisfaction in working with big companies and executives and learning how companies do business. And so I got a lot of gratification from that over the years.
So when did you first really then, I don't know how many years you spent in software. I know it was quite a bit. When did you first start really digging into and looking at the option of owning your own business? Do you remember?
This is probably similar to other people out there listening. As business cycles go through, recessions and growth, you tend to look at other opportunities in your career. And I think probably maybe as long as 10 years ago, I started when the Great Recession hit. Where are those opportunities now? Because our company is shrinking, right? So I started looking then, and I kind of settled in and says, I just got to keep working and get through this recession. And then once I sensed that we were coming out of the Great Recession and that it was okay to make investment and take on a little bit more risk, that I started really saying, okay, it's time. When you start saying it's time, then you got to think about how long it takes to do things, right? And so to actually make something happen and execute on it takes time. And then building a how do I get there, making sure it happens. And I started building a network of people, asking about people they might know that's retiring, that own businesses, talking to business brokers, looking at small companies and understanding, how they work, how they become profitable, those kinds of things. So right around, after the recession started improving.
Yeah. And I know it took you many years to ultimately find Phoenix and consummate that transaction. And I think you and I had looked at a business probably 10 years ago, and it wasn't the right fit for you, and it wasn't the right time. But so bring me from that point forward. How many businesses would you look at on an annual basis, on average? Do you know? And what was your experience like? What did you learn along the way as you were looking at these businesses? I'm curious. Did you find businesses that you said, "Well, I thought I liked that industry, but now that I got a chance to look under the covers, I'm not interested in that at all and anymore."
Right.
Really interested in the journey that you took.
That's a good question. I think what I started doing, obviously, doing your homework, going online, looking at businesses for sale. One of the things that's more of an internal to yourself part of this process is learning to define yourself in owning a company like this versus a corporate career, right? And so you've got to start thinking about defining yourself as a small business owner, right? So, once you start doing those things and looking at the companies, you start looking at them differently than what they do per se, right? And so I think once I kind of got to that stage in the process and started looking at the numbers, business opportunity around these things, it helped dramatically allow you to vet out what kinds of things made good sense. But typically, I wouldn't say I looked at a ton of companies, but I'd say I would go through looking at them pretty closely. I'd say a dozen or so, maybe each year. And then just kind of learning to see how they run and what they did and whether they were a good fit for me.
So that's a fair number of businesses to look at, a dozen a year. As you were going through that process, I'm sure there were businesses that you found that maybe you started to go down the path on and do some significant diligence on. Can you talk about that and talk about ones that you saw? You obviously didn't do those transactions. What caused you to pull away from those transactions?
I'll talk in one in particular. It was a company that was a window blind manufacturer and a really successful one. You got to define what kind of financial return you're looking for every year and those kinds of things. So that kind of limits to what you want. And this particular company had a really nice profitable return, and it was interesting from that perspective, and you wanted to figure out how you could fit yourself into that. And I met with the owner. I met with other companies that had similar businesses here in Chicago and how they ran. And what I liked about it was that he was making his own products in some way, and that kind of helped differentiate his margin and the products that he had. And so I was talking to them. But one of the things I found that kind of impacted my ability to work in that business, it was a one-man shop, and he did it all. And so he was working long hours. And I don't think I was really ready to transition like that into a business where I was maybe doing all of the heavy lifting and the business component. I was looking for something more that I could help strategically and then evolve into a more significant role in the company. And that's when that one really kind of fell apart for me.
So you're sort of hinting here to a topic that we talk about a lot, which is your acquisition criteria. What were the things that you started to tick off that were must-have versus, nice to haves? So when you look at your list of the must-haves, not being the guy that's doing all the work, clearly one, but can you talk to us through some of the other things that were must-haves in a transaction?
Yeah, I'll try to kind of hit on the things that I was thinking of. And one of the things that kind of came from this blind business was, what is my real expertise maybe in? Is it calling on consumers or is it calling on businesses, right? And so one of the things that I kind of came to after that opportunity was, I've been selling to businesses all my career. So I understand how businesses buy things. I understand how dollars are approved. I understand how decisions are made. And so I started thinking a little bit about companies that sell to other companies. And that was a big criteria for me. I also kept an eye out, and this is different for everybody, but I was looking for someone, an owner or someone to help me transition the business over time and allow me to keep the momentum the company has going. And so I wasn't looking necessarily to get the keys and then walk in and just run it. I needed some help, and I was looking for resources to allow me to have the right role from the beginning. And so those were kind of good components. And then also a business that was in a market that had a steady revenue stream that looked like it was something that would continue, and that you could allow that steady revenue stream to keep doing what it does while you figure out ways to grow beyond that, right? And so those were the kinds of things that I was looking for.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. To the M&A Unplugged community, Steve just gave you really a key nugget here. If you're looking to buy our business, it's so important to first take an inventory of yourself. What's important to you? What are you looking for in a transaction? Because it's different for everybody. And you really need to start there before you launch into just looking at deals and transactions. And look, that might change over time, but so important to understand the things that you're looking for out of a transaction. So, Steve, you mentioned earlier that you assembled a group of advisors. Talk a little bit about that. Who did you go to? What types of people were you seeking out? Who wound up being the people that were most helpful to you in the process?
Yeah, good question. I think when you get started, I did meet with some of my friends' fathers who own small businesses, and I talked to them about and taking on the risk and responsibility of owning a business. So I got a sense of, you can say, yeah, I own a small business, but what does that really mean? It means much more than just what it says on the surface, right? And so learning to understand what that is. So I talked to other previous or business owners. I talked to some folks that are in the financial industry and that are involved in investment banking and financing of companies. And they have lots of relationships with owners of small businesses or family businesses and what they did to be successful. They're, like in anybody's network, you're one or two people away from a lot of interesting people, guys that were in private equity that were looking to raise money and do this in a different way, or attorneys that specialize in that, or people that help guys like me if you're looking to finance businesses and how that all works. And so you'll find a lot of interesting people in your own personal network or one step removed that are involved in this kind of world.
So were there any particular types of advisors that were really most helpful to you, the folks that had run businesses, or did you happen to find an accountant or attorney that really helped you think through and shape your acquisition criteria?
I'd say you're right. An accountant that specializes in small businesses, and that's the one that I work with. He was very keen on some of the things, helped me identify some of the things that are important. The flow of cash into the business, the recurring revenue components, the depreciation of assets, all these kinds of things are important to a business model that maintains a good positive cash flow and is consistent. And so I'd say my accountant was actually kind of integral to getting me focusing on those types of things, frankly, than, what it is the company actually does. I would encourage anyone looking for a business to identify someone that works with small business, either an accountant or people in the banking industry that work with small business owners, and that will help you identify what's good and not good and what's important and what's not important, right?
Great advice. Great advice. So let's start to move into the Phoenix transaction. And, I know that it took you a long time to get there, maybe 10 years. You looked at a lot of deals. But before we talk about the Phoenix deal, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about, you described you were looking for a business that was boring. And what was it? Boring and unexpected. Talk a little bit about that, because I think ultimately became a key criteria for you.
Right. Yeah. Under the radar, I guess, was probably the biggest thing. And I tell people that if it has any hint of being sexy, that it's not good. Right? It's because if it does, that means there are a lot of other people that are interested in it too. Right?
I find that to be so interesting, coming from a guy who spent most of his career in software.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I thought it was the glamour of software sales. Oh boy! But if it has anything that is kind of like, boy, that's really cool. There's a lot of other people that like to do that too, and so you're kind of looking for things that other people. It's not drawing a lot of attention, but it's very profitable and very consistent business, right? And so that's something that I was looking for. And even this one, I think first time that this was presented to me, I was like, oh, geez, I don't know if I want to do that. But over the time of exploring it and looking at the business components and the industries that it was in, the kind of customers that it had, the recurring revenue, how the company was managed, all of these pieces started coming together for this one. And I think that's kind of why I proceeded to the path of making an offer and making it happen.
All right, so you got a little ahead of me there.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's exactly where we were going. So when your first impression of Phoenix Industrial was, you didn't know that you wanted to do it. Talk me through how you started to get comfortable and what was the path that you followed.
Prior to this one, there had been other similar types of companies that I looked at in the maybe janitorial space that just didn't excite me very much. But this one had enough of an interesting customer base. It was something that was unique. It was providing a valued service to large manufacturing companies that needed this service on an ongoing basis. These kinds of things, yeah.
Can you just take a minute to talk about the services that Phoenix offers and breadth and depth of what they do?
Sure. So Phoenix Industrial Cleaning provides some cleaning services to manufacturing facilities that create dust in the process of manufacturing, right? So let's say a company in the packaging business, well, you're cutting paper, you're cutting cardboard, you're putting adhesives on paper. All of this creates dust. And that dust gets into the air handling systems. It gets into onto the floors, the walls, the ceilings, and all of this type of dust can be a potential risk to a manufacturing facility. And given the complexity of how companies manage manufacturing today, engineering folks really have it to a science in how they create a profitable business model around their manufacturing facilities. And part of that is maintaining a compliance of safety and clean environments for the people in that business. And so companies in manufacturing or the food manufacturing business are constantly keeping a priority on safety and the environment that they build their products in. And so Phoenix provides that service to companies in the big packaging world, companies in the confection industry, which is big in Chicago, in the large institutional bakery type businesses. You can imagine the silos of flour and sugar and all of that needs to be cleaned on an ongoing basis. So we're constantly in these large manufacturing facilities providing that service, cleaning that area.
I think that hit the criteria of not sexy for sure.
I know,
but not sexy makes money, and so that's great.
But I would say that if you put on a PowerPoint a list of my customers, that is a very sexy list of customers. They're billion-dollar multinational companies that are very profitable. So we have a very, very nice customer base, and that maybe that's too sexy, but I'm very proud of the kinds of businesses that we work with.
That's awesome. That is awesome. So let's go back to you got introduced into the deal. You're looking at it. You weren't at first blush interested, and then you started to take a shine to the business. What were the next couple of things that you did in the process as it unfolded?
You really have to, especially from a financial component, you really had to take a close look at how the flow of the business happens, and the cash comes in, the cash comes out of that business. And so I spent a lot of time analyzing that, how the company runs and how it brings money back into it and pays for itself. So I spent, really digging deep into the numbers, understanding, how that really works. And the last thing you want to do is get into a business that really the flow of, from a financial perspective, really doesn't work. And so that's probably what would keep anybody looking at a business up all night. So you really wanted to make sure that was there and it met your criteria personally and professionally, and it works for you. So that was the big priority.
So you made an offer on the business, and then you start digging in on the financial side. The accountant that you referred to, did he help you with the diligence on the financial side, or did you bring in a third party at that point in time?
My accountant was the acting, I guess, analyst on the financials, and so he came back with very positive response to the business. He kind of made a comment, which is interesting. When you have a lot of money coming from the business in your account, you should be nervous. And when you have a little money in your account, you should be glad, because that means your money is working and people are working and more money's coming. And so, he identified that in the cash flow of this business in particular. So he said, yeah, this is how this is going to run. And you'll find that the more you work, more money will be going out ahead of that, but that's actually good. That means you're aging, your AR is growing, and you're keeping your guys busy. Does that make sense?
Total sense. Was there anything that he found in his diligence that caused him to help you manage the business differently once you took over the reins? So did he find a few things and say, I don't think you should run it this way. I think we should change this, and this, but fundamentally business is sound?
I'm trying to think if I've got anything very specific to that. I think, and maybe a step back here, I managed this business while I was working for someone else before. And so we kind of identified the size and profitability targets in our business that would allow us a logical transition to a more full-time role in the business. I don't know if that helps, but for me, that did. And so, we planned that all out. It wasn't just gee, I think I'll just kind of keep working. Well, hopefully this will go. So we figured out where that watermark is and profitability point to take a larger role in the business.
So you stayed with your job and slowly transitioned into this business, and once you hit the bogey that you were looking for, then it made sense to then move into this business full time.
Correct.
Yeah, makes sense. So that's on the financial side. Let's look at the operational side. So, the accountant is doing the financial diligence. What were you doing on the operational side to understand and get comfortable with how the business was being marketed, their workforce, all those sorts of things?
There were two things that attracted me to this business. One was the company really had not been marketing itself other than kind of a consistent mailing of postcards out to manufacturing companies, which was really old school. And so I was really interested in coming from technology into investing in more of a digital marketing strategy, because today when people are looking for services, they go online and they've got a problem, they go online, and they're in the market when they do that, right? So your hit ratio of if you're doing digital marketing is much higher, especially for something as specific as what we do. And so I saw an opportunity there. I also like this business from an employment perspective, is there was a general manager that had been with the business for about 12 years. And so he understood the manufacturing environments, the OSHA safety rules, and how to manage all the risk of safety that's involved in this kind of business, because you have people on lifts, you have people walking around on the roofs of manufacturing plants, handling equipment. So the company was prepared to carry on managing all the complexity of working in those environments. And so it gave me some in looking into that, it gave me confidence that the company could continue to quote and execute work in really complex, risky environments, right? Because you have people doing, up on lifts and all kinds of things. So understanding the safety records of companies, understanding what they're certified to do, and on the process of doing those things, the company checked all those boxes, I guess.
And certainly one of your key criteria, which was infrastructure, right? You didn't want to come in and have to be the guy. You wanted to know that you can come in and sort of manage the business and not have to be the business. So that's great. Was there anything on the operational side that caused you to take a step back and worry a bit that maybe there wasn't a good solid foundation?
There were a couple of things. The ownership was not local. It was the ownership was in Florida, so he wasn't giving it the eyes and showing his face as much as he should. And so I was concerned that maybe things were lacking there. Going back to safety, it came out in the process that there had been some injuries in the company in the past that had caused a red flag, and wanted to make sure that wasn't something that was going to happen again, because there is risk of safety issues with this type of work. And so I think that was the big thing, is that something that I could improve on if I took on the business, or if it was something that was just too darn risky, right?
And how did you get comfortable with that, Steve? How did you get comfortable that you thought the safety was good enough, or that you can improve it enough that you'd be comfortable?
I built a relation with another person in the insurance industry on the brokerage side, And we talked a lot about building ongoing education and safety programs that would be part of the new management moving forward. And so monthly training and review was something that we could put into the process that would reduce our, there's a modification in insurance, not to get too deep, but to, how safe is this company? And I think we felt that given the right procedures and ongoing education, that we could reduce our risk and improve our mod, so to speak, and get better insurance rates moving forward. And so that's what we did. We executed on it. And we had a very high risk mod when I purchased the company. And today it's 0.88, which is below 1, which is exceptional. And so I turned that negative into something of an opportunity.
That's outstanding. You just offered up another key nugget and key learning for folks out there looking to acquire a business, which is there's no perfect business. Every business has blemishes. In your case, they weren't doing any marketing. Safety might have been an issue, but you did your homework to figure out, that you could correct matters and it wasn't a structural issue, that, you could really improve things. And you got past it and were able to acquire the business. And I think it's so important for people to understand, if you're out there looking for the perfect business, it doesn't exist. I've been doing this a very long time. I haven't represented a client yet that has a perfect business. So if you're a buyer looking for one, you probably want to go do something else. It's not out there.
Yeah. And I think, when you're talking to other folks about, acquiring businesses, what's the tipping point in you personally that allows you to take on that risk and go for it, right? Versus, just looking. And, I think you have to kind of think about time and where you're at in your career and say, okay, I'm whatever age I am today, where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be in 2 years? And what do you want your retirement to look like? Those kinds of questions. And then you've got to build a plan on how you're going to get there. And that if you don't do things, you're not going to get there. So it kind of got to a point where I was, if I don't do something, it's going to take me 2 years to acquire a company, or to find a company, acquire a company, make it successful. You can imagine the time it takes to do all these things. And you go through these all the time. So you kind of get yourself wrapped up in that you need to make a decision to achieve what you want to achieve and when you want to achieve it. And if you don't do those things, the time just goes and nothing happens.
Great advice.
Think about where you want to be in 2 years and how you're going to get there.
Yeah, you're so right, Steve, because it really does take a couple of years to find the right deal and then close on the transaction. It's not an overnight thing. It's hard. It's every now and then we see people get lucky that, they're out there for 6 months and they find the right thing, but it's pretty rare. It takes time.
One other quick thing on that, you kind of get to because you're putting a lot on the line when you buy these companies. You're putting your own personal assets on the line, your career, how you define yourself, and getting to that tipping point that says, I'm ready to do it, I'm ready to make an offer, I'm ready to take this risk is hard for folks. And you need to look at your retirement, where you're going with all of those kinds of things and how you're going to get there. And I think all of that has to come into play as when you're ready to, not only is the right business there for you, but you personally are ready to make that move.
Makes sense. Makes total sense. So let's fast forward. So you go through all the diligence, you get comfortable, you line up your lending and your working capital lines, you close on the transaction, you take over the reins, and bring me through the transition. Did it go the way that you had hoped and planned for? Were there surprises that you hit along the way? What was that like?
So the first year I owned the business, it did exactly what we thought it would do, which was good. It didn't grow, but it didn't shrink. And it created the same amount of revenue that it had done for the previous 5 to 10 years that the company had been doing business. So if we just take the keys and let it do what it does, by golly, it did that. So that was a good thing. So then it became how do we grow the business? And so, part of it was the digital marketing component. It was encouraging the management team to be more aggressive about going after large business. And the previous ownership had been reluctant to take some of those kinds of risks. He was very comfortable with a certain kind of revenue stream. And to grow, you're going to have to take on new business and new customers and that kind of thing. So we identified a couple of big opportunities from a revenue perspective in my second year there that really transformed the company and almost doubled the size of the company our second year, which was fantastic. And so working actually with large roofing projects, we found an opportunity to subcontract with re-roofing projects in some of these large facilities where we could provide a great deal of assistance to those projects. And so that created a market that was out there for us, but we really hadn't been aggressively tapping into it. And so that gave it, so really, I guess where I'm going with that is that was the nice upside that kind of vaulted us into growing, investing in more aggressively in digital marketing.
That's tremendous. Seeing the sort of growth that you've had in just a couple of years is outstanding. Even keeping things steady that first year is always tough because there's always that transition and slotting in, and does the company lose some momentum? And so kudos to you for keeping the ship steady and then in year two growing it. So Steve, if you're looking back now at the entire process, right? From when you first started thinking about acquiring a business to where you are today, if there are one or two things that you would offer to people that are in your shoes, what would that be?
Well, I get tremendous gratification for working for myself and running our own business. And whatever bad days you have in owning your own business, it's a good day because you are the boss and it's your business and you're growing something special that you're going to be rewarded for. And so, any bad day I have, and everybody has them, I'm still glad that I own, and I really am passionate about owning this business. So, and that's legitimately true. I feel that way about it. There's great satisfaction in getting through all it takes to own and identify a business and purchase it and get to a mature state in it is extremely rewarding, I would say. I would also keep your eyes on the other side of that wide open, that owning an own business means that you are financially responsible for the flow of business and the cash flow of the business. And so managing all of those things week in and week out, the payroll, the bills, the taxes, your own personal finances, that's all your responsibility. And so, learning how to do that successfully in a business is something that you have to learn to do. And each business is different. So I would say that, learning how to manage the finances of a business is extremely important. And then, of course, the gratification from it are the two things I would tell people.
Steve, the last question that I'm asking guests, put a sort of a straw man poll out there, and I've gotten some great ideas. Are there any books that you've read, anything that, whether it be business or non-business, that have had an impact on you in the way that you think about business ownership?
I'm trying to think of the ones that recently there's a book out there called Good to Great. It's been around for a while, but when you first start managing a business, and when people do the job is one thing, but when people do a job and make it better, that's really the kinds of people that you're looking to hire in your business. I think that's one of the things that, how do I make things better? When I look at things that way now, maybe more than I ever did, which, is good or bad, but finding people that take a role and make it better. And as I'm interviewing people into the company, I always try to gauge whether this person is going to be someone that just gets the work done, or someone that gets the work done and creates a bigger contribution to your company. So I would say that's a big thing, and that allows you to keep investing in your business and making it better, is the people that you hire and the ways that you're trying to make your business better. Creates value in the company, creates good employees, and looking for people that will take ownership of their roles and making it better.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Steve, thank you so much for being our guest today, and congratulations on a successful transaction, but beyond the successful transaction, taking the business to the next level. Kudos to you. And so for anybody that's listening to the podcast today, if they wanted to get in touch with you, if they had a need for some industrial cleaning services, how can they reach you?
Yeah, I can give you my email address. I'm Steve at phoenicici.com. And our website is phoenicici.com. And you can go to our website and you can call us directly from there, or email me directly. And, I'd be happy to talk to you more about business ownership or how our company could help your company.
Thanks, Steve. It's been such a pleasure to have you on.
Appreciate it. Enjoyed it. Thanks.
Just to summarize a few key things that Steve brought up during the interview. First is understanding your acquisition criteria. It's so important before you launch a search to really understand what you're looking for. That requires you to take an inventory of yourself, your strengths and weaknesses, and be honest with yourself about where your capabilities lie and where your interests lie. Next thing is lining up the right set of advisors. I say this all the time, but having the right set of advisors can make all the difference in a profitable transaction and an unprofitable one. Blemishes. If you're looking to acquire a business, every business out there has blemishes. It's understanding whether or not those blemishes are things that you can overcome and even improve upon. And that's where the upside is going to come from. Like Steve acquired Phoenix Industrial. He knew they weren't marketing, came in, applied his skill set to the business, and he's been able to grow the business by 60%. And understanding the right time to take the plunge, both financially and emotionally. You have to, obviously have the money put aside and be ready to take on the risks, but you also have to be emotionally ready to take the leap of faith and to put it on the line and be a small business owner. So those were tremendous insights from Steve, and really appreciated him coming on and sharing those with us today. All of today's information will be available in the show notes. If you would like to learn more about the process of acquiring or selling a business, please visit our website at sunacquisitions.com, or feel free to reach out to me at drinaldi@sunacquisitions.com. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the M&A Unplugged podcast. And until then, please remember that scaling, acquiring, or selling a business takes time, preparation, and the proper knowledge.
Thank you for joining us today on M&A Unplugged. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and recommend it wherever you get your podcasts. If you want more great information on how to scale, acquire, or sell a business, please visit our website at sunacquisitions.com.